Okay, so today we're going to be looking at creating questionnaires. So first of all, it's really important that you understand the difference between a questionnaire and surveying. A lot of the time the terminology is used interchangeably, but they're actually different things. So a questionnaire is, like paper questions online. The presentation is different and doesn't really matter. What matters is that it is a set of questions that are answered. That actual physical set of questions, or virtual, is the questionnaire. The technique that you use in order to deliver a questionnaire is called surveying. So if you deliver a survey, okay, what you're actually doing is going out and giving questionnaires, getting them filled in, bringing them back, interpreting the data, that sort of thing. But surveying is a technique. Questionnaire is the tool that is used. So there's a few things that we need to get straight about creating a questionnaire. So first of all, it needs to start with a statement about purpose. Okay, so please make sure you actually write these as full sentences. I just don't want to waste lots of time doing that. You can pause and get these down as we go while you listen to what I'm going through with you. So second of all, number the questions. Okay, so you really need to make sure that that's done. It allows you to refer back. It means that the respondent will actually answer them in the order that you want them answered in. They need to be, so all of them need to be worded. They need to be clear. They need to be unambiguous. So that means that they need to, and unbiased, they need to not be able to be interpreted differently by different people. So it needs to be super clear, easy language that no matter who reads the question, they're all going to interpret the same. Unambiguous is, so ambiguity is what we try to avoid when we write exams for you. So we spend a lot of time going through those questions and making sure to the best that we can that when we read those questions, because of course we're reading them from a teacher perspective, we try and put ourselves in a student's point of view and decide whether or not all of the students are going to read that and interpret it the same way, so that you are answering to meet the criteria. So when you do a questionnaire, you have to make sure that your questions are unambiguous. So really have to work on the wording and make sure that they're able to be interpreted by everyone the same. Short answers at most. Okay, so there's lots of different ways. They can circle, they can do all sorts of things, but you don't want great big paragraphs, because then it opens up interpretation on your side as the collector or analyzer when you're sort of organising that information. Long, windy answers are a bit harder to sort of fathom. So we can have open-ended, or we could have closed. So open-ended questions are the ones where they have to actually provide an answer. So there's a blank line, a blank space, and they need to actually put something in. The answer could be anything. That's why it's open. Closed questions are the ones where they have to, they have to tick a box, or they have to circle a letter, that kind of thing, make a choice. Sometimes it's about a scale, and they have to, shade the bubble of where they are on that scale, that kind of thing. So that's closed because there is a set number of answers. Sometimes it's even just a list of things, and they have to choose, which one that they agree with for their answer. But the answers, there is a set lot of answers that they choose from. That's a closed question. Open-ended questions, any answer at the end. Being said, we want very few open-ended questions. Okay? they tend to be a bit harder to interpret, and it's a bit harder to collate that sort of data and present it when there are so many different responses that can be given. You then have to kind of look for, it's a bit harder to find those trends and patterns and ways of grouping and organising the data. So you don't want too many open-ended questions. So categories. You should definitely use categories for sensitive information. For example, you never do a questionnaire where it says, what is your age? And then they write their age. You always give age ranges. So people, same with pay scales. If you're asking, if you have a look at like the census, if you got to look at it last year, the census will only give a range. So you circle your age range, 20 to 25, 26 to 30, that kind of thing, and then the same with income. People are really reluctant to put a number on. They're more okay choosing a range because it gives an idea of where their income or their age is without having to actually give over that specific sensitive information. So you need to make sure that's incorporated. Don't make it too long. That's a big no-no, okay? You don't want your respondents to get tired of answering them or rush through and just do whatever at the end. You just want to make it long enough that they can put the effort in and not be over it before the end. And lastly, you need to be really clear about how you're going to compile the results, okay, and then what they're also used for, okay, so how those results are actually going to be used. People are not going to be happy about filling out a questionnaire if they don't know what the information is actually going to be used for. So let's just get rid of this. Okay, so basically question structuring. We've got most of the time options. Yeah, so here's a box, yes or no. Yeah, or they can go 0 to 5 hours, 6 to 10 hours, 11 to 15 hours. Okay, and then they get to choose. So that's an example of a range. Rank from 1 to 5. Okay, and so they then give their stuff, and then they give their question, their whatever, and then they give the ranking so that all the person has to do is say circle. Over here, they just have to tick a box. Yeah, yes, no, true, false, that kind of thing. You can also have a bit of a scale. So not at all, some, mostly, all the time. Now sometimes that could be a list with little boxes next to them and you choose, or sometimes, like you would have done on your free personality test, we can have a bit of a scale there where you can choose the bubble, or tick or whatever. But you can choose along that scale to show the answer. Unstructured questions allow your respondent to just respond however they like. So these here, so open-ended, are also referred to as unstructured. Okay. You only use these sorts of unstructured questions when you are really not sure what to expect from the respondents. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to rub this out and I'm going to write up a few, like an example, and then I want you to work through this before, pause and work through it before having a look at the the answer. Okay, so what I'm going to get you to do is rewrite this question so that it is more likely to be answered correctly. Okay, so you're after weekly income. You've got a survey, a questionnaire that you're using for your survey. Okay, and you've written, what is your weekly income? Now, as we discussed, sensitive information, I want you to rewrite that so that it is more likely that people will actually give a correct answer. So pause now and do that. Okay, so what we really want is for people to be okay with answering, so we give them a range. So we're going to say, please circle something similar to this, the range that best shows your normal weekly income, and we might actually add before tax and expenses. Yeah, so we want to make sure it's really clear. So what is your weekly income doesn't really tell me. Do you want to know how much I get in the bank? Do you want to know how much they actually pay me before or after the deductions taken out? I've got tax, I've got superannuation, I've got some bills that come out before I even really get the money in my bank. So you have to be quite clear about what you mean. And then we basically just give them a range. So 0 to 199. We want to make sure we include everyone. And then 200 to 399. 400 to 499, and so forth until we get to 1600 or more. And I guess if you were using this as a question, you would have to make sure that you kind of have a look at what the average wage is, because you would expect to not have too many people down the end here, but you would also not expect to have too many people massively ahead of your top one. So you would 1600 or more, or maybe you'd go 5,600 or more. I mean, it's weekly, so probably not, but whatever you choose, often it's actually a really good idea to make sure that you kind of researched and that you know the sorts of answers you're likely to get. You won't be able to predict all of it, but making that prediction ahead of time means that you can actually formulate a question that you will get a proper response to, one that you're after. Okay, so make sure that you understand how to create a questionnaire, the different sorts of questions, those sort of rules and guidelines on how to create a good questionnaire, so that you get the responses that you want without any sort of bias.